What happens when a black woman's dream home turns into a war zone? A Karen brands her a thief, but who's pulling the strings? One bold move turns the tables. Watch this. Picture a tranquil summer morning in an upscale neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio, where the air hums with the soft buzz of cicadas, their song weaving through the golden sunlight like a lullaby. The faint scent of blooming jasmine drifts on the breeze, mingling with the earthy aroma of freshly mowed lawns. Elegant two-story homes line the street, their manicured gardens bursting with color. But at the heart of this serene scene lies a backyard oasis. A stunning pool, its crystal-clear water shimmering like a mirror under the Ohio sun, reflecting the endless blue sky above. This pool belongs to Vanessa Carter, a 42-year-old former police officer who, after 18 years of serving her community, often in the face of danger and prejudice, finally achieved her dream. She bought this home with her hard-earned savings, a testament to her resilience, a symbol of everything she's fought for. Vanessa, a black woman with a commanding presence, stands by her pool, her simple sundress fluttering lightly in the warm breeze. Her deep brown eyes, sharp and unyielding, carry the weight of countless nights on patrol, but today they soften as she takes in the stillness. The sun kisses her skin, wrapping her in a golden glow, and for a moment she closes her eyes, savoring the peace she's earned. The water's gentle ripples create a soothing melody, blending with the distant chirp of a cardinal perched on a bare tree beyond the rustic stone wall that frames her yard. This is her sanctuary, a place where the chaos of her past life on the force feels like a distant memory. But that peace is about to be shattered. A sharp creak pierces the calm, the sound of her back gate swinging open, its rusty hinges groaning in protest. Vanessa's eyes snap open, her police instincts kicking in like a reflex. Her heart quickens not with fear, but with the alertness of someone who's spent years sizing up threats in an instant. She turns, her gaze locking onto the intruder, Margaret Evans, a wealthy white woman in her late 40s, strutting into the backyard like it's her personal resort. Margaret's designer swimsuit glints under the sunlight, the bright turquoise fabric a stark contrast to her pale skin, and her oversized sunglasses perch on her nose like a crown. Her lips curl into a smug, entitled smirk as she tosses a luxury beach towel onto Vanessa's pool chair, the soft thud of the fabric against the wood echoing in the stillness. "Margaret," Vanessa calls, her voice steady but edged with the authority of someone who's spent years de-escalating conflicts, her tone carrying the weight of countless high-stakes encounters. "This is private property. You can't just walk in here." Margaret doesn't even flinch. She adjusts her sunglasses with a manicured hand, her nails painted a glossy coral that catches the light, and her tone drips with condescension as she replies, "Oh, darling, don't be so dramatic." Her voice is syrupy sweet, but there's a venom beneath it, a sharpness that cuts through the humid air. "The previous owners always let me use this pool. I figured you'd be, well, more understanding." Her words linger, heavy with a racist undertone that makes Vanessa's stomach churn. The implication hangs between them like a storm cloud, dark and oppressive, and for a moment, the cicada's song seems to fade, replaced by the pounding of Vanessa's pulse in her ears. But 18 years on the force taught Vanessa to keep her cool under pressure. She takes a deep breath, the scent of jasmine grounding her, and sets down her iced tea, the glass clinking softly against the stone table, the sound sharp in the tense silence. Her hands are steady, but inside she's counting to 10, a technique she learned early in her career to keep her emotions in check. "I'm the owner now," she says, her voice firm, unwavering, each word a quiet declaration of her right to this space. "And I'd appreciate it if you asked permission before stepping onto my property." Margaret lets out a sharp, mocking laugh, the sound grating against the peaceful morning like nails on a chalkboard. Her perfectly manicured nails glint as she waves a dismissive hand, her gold bracelets jingling with the motion. "You? The owner?" She tilts her head, her sunglasses sliding down her nose just enough to reveal a cold, judgmental stare. "That's adorable. I know the realtor who sold this place, and she didn't mention someone like you." Her gaze rakes over Vanessa, lingering on her simple sundress, her bare feet, her skin, the meaning unmistakable. The air grows heavy, the humidity pressing down like a physical weight, and Vanessa feels the sting of Margaret's words like a slap. But she doesn't flinch. She's faced worse than this. hostile suspects, systemic bias, nights where she wasn't sure she'd make it home. This is just another challenge. I'll be back, sweetheart, Margaret says, her voice now a low, threatening purr as she turns to leave. Don't get too comfortable. Her heels click against the stone path, each step a deliberate taunt, and as she disappears through the gate, Vanessa grips the arms of her chair, her knuckles tightening with restrained anger. The cicadas resume their song, but the peace of the morning is gone, replaced by a simmering tension that clings to the air like the scent of chlorine rising from the pool. Let's rewind a few weeks to when this nightmare began. Vanessa had just moved into her dream home, a milestone she'd worked toward since she joined the police force at 24. Her parents, both school teachers, had instilled in her a fierce work ethic, their voices echoing in her mind as she signed the papers for this house. Work hard, Vanessa. Don't let anyone tell you what you can't have. This house was her reward for years of sacrifice. Long nights on patrol, the weight of her badge, a constant reminder of the lives she protected, the prejudice she faced as a black woman in uniform. The backyard pool, framed by a rustic stone wall and bare trees, had stolen her heart the moment she saw it. The water sparkled like a promise, a symbol of the peace she'd fought so hard to claim. She was arranging her patio furniture, the scent of fresh paint still lingering in the air, the sharp tang mixing with the sweetness of blooming roses in her garden. The sun was high, casting playful shadows through the bare branches, and Vanessa hummed softly to herself, a rare moment of joy after years of high-stakes stress. That's when she first noticed Margaret watching her from a second-floor window across the street. Margaret stood there, phone pressed to her ear, her expression cold and calculating, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek bun that screamed, "Control." Vanessa waved politely, her hand lingering in the air, but Margaret vanished behind her curtains, her silhouette ominous against the glass, leaving a chill in Vanessa's spine despite the summer heat. The next day, while Vanessa was at the hardware store picking up supplies, nails, a hammer, a new lock for her gate, her security camera pinged. The notification buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled out her phone, her brow furrowing as she opened the app. There was Margaret, waltzing through the unlocked back gate like she owned the place, her designer swimsuit shimmering in the sunlight as she dipped her toes into Vanessa's pool. The water rippled under her touch, the gentle splash a stark contrast to the audacity of her intrusion. Margaret laid out her towel, the bright pink fabric clashing with the natural tones of the backyard, and reclined on a chair, sipping from a crystal glass of rosé as if she were at a five-star resort. Vanessa's grip tightened on her phone, her heart racing with a mix of anger and disbelief. She drove home as fast as the speed limit allowed, the hum of her car's engine a steady rhythm against her rising frustration. When she arrived, she marched straight to the backyard, the scent of chlorine hitting her as she pushed open the gate. "Margaret," she said, her voice cutting through the stillness like a blade, "what are you doing here?" Margaret looked up, her sunglasses slipping down her nose, and her smile was venomous, a predator toying with its prey. "Oh, I thought you were the new pool maintenance worker," she said, her tone implying far more than her words, each syllable laced with a condescension that made Vanessa's skin crawl. "The previous owners always let me use this pool. You should be grateful I'm even here." Her laugh was sharp, slicing through the humid air, and she took a slow sip of her rosé, her eyes never leaving Vanessa's. Vanessa's jaw tightened, but her training kicked in. Stay calm, assess the situation, don't let emotions take over. She crossed her arms, her posture unyielding, the same stance she'd used to face down armed suspects. "I'm not the maintenance worker," she said, her voice steady, each word a quiet assertion of her place. "I'm the owner. Please leave, or I'll have to take further steps." Her gaze was unwavering, a silent challenge, but inside she felt the weight of Margaret's words, the unspoken racism that lingered like a bitter aftertaste. Margaret gathered her things with an exaggerated sigh, her movements slow and deliberate as if to say she wasn't intimidated. "We'll see how long you last in this neighborhood," she muttered under her breath, her voice low but loud enough for Vanessa to hear as she sauntered out, the gate creaking shut behind her. Vanessa stood there, the sun beating down on her, the scent of chlorine and jasmine swirling around her, and for the first time since moving in, she felt a flicker of doubt, but she pushed it down, her resolve hardening like steel. She'd faced worse than Margaret Evans. She'd survived 18 years on the force. She wasn't going anywhere. Over the next few weeks, Margaret's behavior escalated from intrusive to outright hostile, each incident a deliberate attempt to push Vanessa out. One Saturday morning, Vanessa woke to the sound of splashing and laughter, the scent of sunscreen wafting through the air like an unwelcome guest. She rubbed the sleep from her eyes, her bare feet padding against the cool hardwood floor as she made her way to the window. Peeking through the blinds, she saw Margaret hosting a full-blown pool party in her backyard. 6 of her friends lounging on Vanessa's chairs, their champagne flutes sparkling in the sunlight, their voices carrying over the water like a chorus of entitlement. Vanessa's heart sank, but her anger rose like a tide, hot and unrelenting. She slipped on a light cardigan, the soft fabric brushing against her skin, and stepped onto her patio, the heat of the day already making her skin prickle with sweat. The scent of chlorine mixed with the floral notes of Margaret's perfume, a cloying combination that made Vanessa's stomach turn. "You need to leave, now," she demanded, her voice cutting through the laughter like a siren, her police training giving her words an authority that couldn't be ignored. Margaret waved her off, her tone dripping with disdain as she reclined on a chair, her sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. "Oh, don't be so uptight," she said, her voice carrying over the water, each word a deliberate taunt. "This pool barely gets used anyway. We're just having a little fun." She took a sip of her champagne, the bubbles catching the light, and her friends giggled nervously, their designer swimsuits a stark contrast to the natural beauty of the backyard. One of Margaret's friends, a petite woman with auburn hair, shifted uncomfortably, her voice barely above a whisper as she leaned toward Margaret. "Margaret, you said you had permission." Her eyes darted to Vanessa, a flicker of guilt in her expression, but Margaret just laughed, her voice cutting through the humid air like a knife. "Permission? From her?" She gestured at Vanessa with a dismissive wave, her coral nails flashing in the sunlight, and the racism in her tone was unmistakable, a slap that echoed in the stillness. Vanessa's patience was wearing thin, the heat of the day amplifying her frustration, the cicadas' song a relentless drone in the background, but she remembered a lesson from her years on the force: document everything. She pulled out her phone, her fingers steady despite the anger simmering beneath her skin, and snapped a photo of the scene, the shutter sound a quiet promise of justice. "This is your last warning," she said, her voice low and dangerous, the same tone she'd used to de-escalate countless crises. "Leave now, or I'll call the authorities." Margaret rolled her eyes, but her friends began to gather their things, their movements hurried, their champagne flutes clinking as they packed up. "You're no fun," Margaret sneered, standing up with an exaggerated stretch, her swimsuit shimmering as she moved. "But don't worry, I'll be back. This isn't over." She sauntered out, her heels clicking against the stone, leaving Vanessa standing by her pool, the water now rippling with the aftermath of their intrusion, the scent of sunscreen lingering like a stain. That afternoon, Vanessa installed security cameras around her property, their tiny red lights blinking like silent guardians, their soft hum a comforting presence in the stillness. She watched the footage later that evening, the glow of her laptop screen casting shadows across her face, and saw Margaret testing the gate at odd hours, the metallic clank echoing in the night, peering through her windows, her shadow looming against the glass, even attempting to use a key from the previous owners, the jingle of metal betraying her. Each incident was a deliberate violation, a challenge to Vanessa's right to her own space, and with each one, her resolve grew stronger. The final straw came when Vanessa returned from a long day mentoring at-risk youth, the scent of chalk and laughter still clinging to her as she pulled into her driveway. She stepped into her backyard, her heart sinking as she saw Margaret hosting a book club by her pool, 10 women sipping wine and lounging on her chairs, the scent of Chardonnay mixing with the chlorine in the air, their voices a cacophony of entitlement. Vanessa's anger flared, but she kept her composure, her police training guiding her as she dialed the non-emergency line. Officers Daniels and Lopez arrived, both former colleagues from Vanessa's precinct, their uniforms crisp against the fading light. "Vanessa, good to see you," Officer Daniels said, his voice warm, his dark eyes crinkling with a familiar smile. But his expression shifted as he took in the scene, the women's laughter dying down as they noticed the officers. Oh, it's one of those calls. Margaret immediately turned on the waterworks, her voice trembling with crocodile tears as she clutched her wine glass like a lifeline. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," she cried, her blonde hair falling dramatically over her shoulder. "This woman is harassing us. We've always had pool privileges with the previous owners." Her friends nodded, their faces a mix of guilt and defiance, but Vanessa stood tall, her presence unyielding, the scent of chlorine grounding her in the moment. Officer Lopez cut Margaret off, his tone firm, his badge glinting in the sunlight. "Ma'am, Ms. Carter is the owner. If she says you're trespassing, you're trespassing. Leave now, or we'll make this official." His words were a quiet command, and Margaret's face flushed with humiliation, her tears drying up as quickly as they'd appeared. Her friends scurried away, their heels clattering against the stone, their wine glasses abandoned on the table, but as Margaret left, she turned to Vanessa, her eyes blazing with fury. "This isn't over," she hissed, her voice low and venomous, her coral nails digging into her palms. "You don't belong here, and I'll make sure everyone knows it." Vanessa watched her go, the gate creaking shut behind her, the cicada's song resuming as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the pool. But the peace of the evening was gone, replaced by a simmering tension that clung to the air like the scent of chlorine. Margaret's words echoed in her mind, a reminder of the racism she'd faced her entire life, but also a challenge she was ready to meet. She'd spent 18 years protecting her community. She wasn't about to let Margaret Evans take that away from her. Little did Margaret know, Vanessa was already forming a plan, one that would turn her entitlement into a lesson she'd never forget. Margaret's relentless trespassing had turned Vanessa's dream home into a battlefield, each intrusion a sharp reminder of the racism she'd faced her entire life. From the skeptical glances during her police academy days to the whispered slurs on late-night patrols. But as the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, painting the sky in hues of amber and crimson, Vanessa stood by her backyard pool, the crystal-clear water reflecting the first stars like a canvas of hope. The scent of chlorine stung her nose, mingling with the faint sweetness of jasmine drifting on the breeze, and the cicada's song hummed a steady rhythm in the background. The stone wall and bare trees framed the scene with a misty ambiance, a serene facade that belied the storm brewing in Vanessa's heart. She wasn't just fighting for her pool, she was fighting for her place in a world that had tried to tell her she didn't belong. Vanessa's mind drifted to her early days on the force, the weight of her badge a constant reminder of the lives she protected, but also the prejudice she endured. She remembered a white sergeant who'd once sneered, "You'll never make it past your first year," his words laced with the same venom as Margaret's dismissive taunts. But Vanessa had proven him wrong, rising through the ranks with grit and grace, her calm demeanor a shield against the hate. Now, as she stood by her pool, the cool stone beneath her bare feet grounding her, she felt that same fire reignite. Margaret thought she could break her, but Vanessa had faced worse than a spoiled neighbor. She'd stared down armed suspects, navigated systemic bias, and come out stronger every time. This was her home, her sanctuary, and she'd be damned if she let Margaret steal that from her. Her police training kicked in, the strategic mind that had once planned sting operations now turning to a more creative form of justice. She recalled a case from her rookie days, a quirky incident involving a non-toxic, temporary pool dye used to detect leaks. The dye had a unique property. It only activated when it came in contact with certain chemicals in high-end sunscreens and cosmetics, the kind Margaret and her friends slathered on before their unauthorized swims. It wasn't harmful, not permanent, just incredibly embarrassing. A slow, determined smile spread across Vanessa's face, her reflection in the pool shimmering with quiet resolve, her deep brown eyes gleaming with a mix of defiance and mischief. For the first time in weeks, the weight of Margaret's racism lifted, replaced by a spark of hope that warmed her more than the fading sun. Vanessa prepared with the precision of a seasoned officer, the scent of chlorine lingering on her hands as she ordered the dye online, the faint click of her keyboard echoing in her quiet home office. When the package arrived, she tested it in a small bucket, mixing in some of Margaret's favorite sunscreen, left behind on her pool chairs after her last intrusion, its floral scent a mocking reminder of her entitlement. The water turned a bright, unmistakable green, the color of a St. Patrick's Day parade, vibrant and impossible to ignore. Vanessa's heart raced with a mix of satisfaction and anticipation, the same thrill she'd felt during her first successful bust. She installed 3 additional hidden cameras around the pool, their lenses capturing every angle, the soft whir of their motors a quiet promise of justice. The red lights blinked in the twilight, her silent allies in the battle ahead. Late that night, under a crescent moon that cast silvery shadows across the stone wall, Vanessa added the dye to the pool, the liquid slipping into the water with a faint plop, invisible against the misty backdrop of the early morning. The pool looked as inviting as ever, its surface shimmering under the moonlight, the bare trees swaying gently in the breeze. She stepped back, her breath visible in the cool night air, the scent of jasmine mixing with the sharp tang of chlorine, and felt a surge of pride. This wasn't just about a pool, it was about standing her ground, about turning hate into a lesson that would echo far beyond this backyard. Through the neighborhood grapevine, whispers shared over mailboxes and morning jogs, Vanessa learned Margaret was planning another unauthorized pool party that weekend. A small gathering to maintain community standards, Margaret had boasted to her friends, her voice loud enough for Vanessa to overhear from her patio as she watered her roses, the scent of the blooms grounding her in the moment. Vanessa smiled to herself, her watering can tipping gently as she imagined Margaret's smug fate. Margaret's arrogance was her downfall, and Vanessa was ready to let karma take the stage. On the morning of the party, Vanessa made a show of leaving, her car's engine humming as she drove around the corner, the scent of her lavender air freshener lingering in the air. She doubled back through a side gate, her sneakers silent against the grass, and slipped into her home office, which had a perfect view of the pool. She settled into her chair, the leather creaking softly beneath her, and opened her security app on her phone, the screen glowing with live feeds from her camera. The pool sparkled innocently under the midday sun, the misty air around it creating a dreamy haze, but Vanessa's heart pounded with anticipation, her police instincts on high alert. She waited, her fingers tapping a steady rhythm on her desk, the faint scent of her morning coffee still lingering in the room, a quiet reminder of the calm before the storm. At precisely 1 p.m., Margaret made her grand entrance, sashaying through Vanessa's gate like a queen claiming her throne, followed by 8 of her friends, their designer swimsuits and beach bags screaming privilege. The gate creaked as it swung open, the sound a sharp note in the otherwise quiet afternoon, and Vanessa's lips curled into a subtle smirk. Margaret's turquoise swimsuit shimmered in the sunlight, her oversized sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, and her laughter rang out, sharp and confident, as she led her posse to the poolside. They set up their little party with practiced ease, champagne flutes clinking like tiny bells, a Bluetooth speaker playing soft jazz that drifted over the water, the scent of their expensive sunscreen mixing with the humid air, a cloying floral note that made Vanessa's nose wrinkle. "Ladies, welcome to our Saturday oasis," Margaret announced, raising her glass, the champagne catching the light like a prism. "This pool belongs to the neighborhood, not some outsider who thinks she can claim it." Her voice was smug, each word a deliberate jab at Vanessa's race, her entitlement a dagger that pierced the humid air. Her friends giggled nervously, their eyes darting around as if expecting Vanessa to appear, but the promise of a private pool party on a swelteringly unbearable Ohio afternoon quickly overcame their hesitation, the heat pressing down like a heavy blanket, the cicadas' song, a relentless drone in the background. One by one they slathered on their high-end sunscreen, the creamy lotion glistening on their skin as they rubbed it in with meticulous care. They dove into the pool, the water rippling with their elegant splashes, the sound of their laughter echoing off the stone wall like a chorus of entitlement. "It's perfect," Margaret called out, her voice dripping with arrogance as she floated on her back, her blonde hair fanning out in the water like a halo, her sunglasses now perched on her nose. The scene was picture perfect, a postcard of privilege. But Vanessa knew what was coming. She leaned forward in her chair, her eyes glued to the screen, her heart racing with a mix of anticipation and justice. It started slowly, a subtle shift that Margaret and her friends didn't notice at first. Margaret's friend Cynthia, a petite woman with auburn hair, was the first to react. She gasped, staring at her arm in horror as she climbed out of the pool, water dripping from her skin like tiny diamonds. "Margaret, why is my skin green?" she whispered, her voice trembling, her eyes wide with disbelief. Under the bright afternoon sun, a distinct emerald tint was spreading across her arm, the color vibrant and unmistakable, a stark contrast to her pale complexion. Margaret looked down at her own hands, her smug smile vanishing like a shadow in the sunlight. She lifted them from the water, the droplets catching the light as they fell, and her shriek pierced the air, a high-pitched wail that echoed through the neighborhood, silencing the cicadas for a moment. "This can't be happening to me," she screamed, her voice cracking with a mix of panic and rage as the green tint spread across her hands, her arms, her legs, a bright, St. Patrick's Day green that made her look like she'd been dipped in food coloring. "I'm Margaret Evans! I don't deserve this!" Her words were a desperate plea to the universe, but the universe wasn't listening. Karma was. Her friends scrambled out of the pool, their screams piercing the air, a chaotic symphony of horror as their carefully manicured hands turned the same vibrant shade, their expensive makeup streaking down their faces, leaving green trails that glistened in the sunlight. "My charity gala is tomorrow," one woman wailed, examining her now green legs, her voice trembling with despair as she clutched her designer beach bag like a lifeline. Another friend, a tall blonde in a red swimsuit, ran her fingers through her hair, only to pull them back stained green, her scream echoing off the stone wall as she stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a champagne flute. Margaret stood there, dripping and green, her face contorted in rage, her sunglasses slipping down her nose as she spun around, her eyes darting frantically for the source of her humiliation. That's when she spotted one of Vanessa's cameras, its small red light blinking cheerfully from its perch above the pool, a silent witness to her downfall. "You think you can humiliate me, you nobody?" Margaret roared, her voice shrill, her green-tinted hands clenched into fists as she stormed toward the camera, water dripping from her swimsuit onto the stone patio. "I'll sue you for everything you're worth." Her threat echoed in the stillness, but Vanessa watched from her office, her smile widening as she recorded every second, the soft hum of her phone a quiet reminder of the justice unfolding before her. Margaret's arrogance had been her undoing, and now the world would see her for what she truly was. The exodus that followed was a sight to behold. 9 green-tinted women running through the neighborhood in their designer swimsuits, leaving trails of wet green footprints on the sidewalk, their screams fading into the distance as they fled in all directions. Vanessa captured it all, her fingers flying across her keyboard as she edited the footage with clips of Margaret's previous trespassing incidents. The metallic clank of the gate at odd hours, the shadow looming against her windows, the jingle of the stolen key. All set to the same soft jazz music they'd been playing, a mocking soundtrack to their downfall. Within hours the video went viral, racking up millions of views across social media, the comments section exploding with laughing emojis and green hearts. Local news stations picked up the story, with headlines like, "Trespassing Margaret Gets a Green Makeover" trending online, the story spreading like wildfire through the digital landscape. Margaret's real estate agency couldn't ignore the viral disaster. Their social media pages were flooded with green emoji comments, potential clients tagging them with questions about whether they could trust an agent who trespassed on private property. By Monday morning, they'd released a statement, their words carefully measured. "We pride ourselves on respect for property rights. The actions shown in the video do not reflect our company's values." The neighborhood WhatsApp group buzzed with activity, the faint ping of notifications filling the air as residents who'd stayed quiet during Margaret's campaign against Vanessa finally found their voices. One neighbor, Mrs. Patel, who'd lived across the street for a decade, shared her own story, her words a quiet rebellion. "Margaret told me my Diwali lights were too ethnic for the neighborhood. I kept quiet because I didn't want trouble, but seeing Vanessa stand up to her, I'm done staying silent." Mrs. Patel's message was a turning point, her courage inspiring others to speak out, the dam of silence breaking at last. But the most satisfying moment came when Margaret, still sporting a faint mint hue, attempted damage control. She posted a video on her social media, her green-tinned appearance glowing under the camera lights making her look like a frustrated wicked witch of the West. "I was just trying to maintain community standards," she insisted, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and embarrassment, her coral nails digging into her palms as she spoke. The video only made things worse. Going viral for all the wrong reasons, the comments section filled with memes of Margaret as a green villain, her reputation crumbling with every view. Margaret's final attempt at revenge backfired spectacularly. She tried to organize a neighborhood meeting to discuss dangerous chemical usage in pools, her voice dripping with faux concern as she sent out the invitations, the scent of her lavender stationery lingering in the air. But only 2 people showed up, both wearing green ribbons in silent support of Vanessa, their quiet defiance a slap in Margaret's face. 2 weeks later, a for sale sign appeared in front of Margaret's house, the bold red letters a stark contrast to the pristine lawn, the scent of fresh paint signaling her defeat. The remaining green tint had faded from her skin, but her reputation was permanently stained, a scar she couldn't wash away. She started taking the long way around the block to avoid passing Vanessa's house. Especially during her weekend pool parties, her head ducked low to avoid the curious stares of her former neighbors. Those gatherings became a neighborhood highlight, a stark contrast to Margaret's exclusive entitled soirees. Vanessa hosted them properly, with handwritten invitations on cream-colored paper, the scent of her lavender-scented stationery a quiet promise of inclusion. She set safety rules, her police training evident in the careful organization, and grilled her famous chicken, the smoky aroma filling the air as children splashed happily in the pool, their laughter echoing over the water like a melody. Parents chatted over lemonade, the tart citrus scent mingling with the warmth of the sun, creating the kind of community Margaret had claimed to protect, but actually destroyed. Mrs. Patel brought her famous samosas to the 4th of July barbecue, her smile wide as she hugged Vanessa, the pool sparkling innocently in the background. "You've given us a home, not just a neighborhood," she said, her voice thick with emotion, her words a testament to Vanessa's victory over Margaret's racism. The new family that bought Margaret's house, a young couple with a toddler, fit perfectly into the community, their laughter a new addition to the neighborhood's soundtrack. Their little girl joined the neighborhood swim team, and Vanessa helped her practice on weekends, the sound of her giggles echoing over the water as Vanessa taught her to float, the scent of sunscreen and chlorine a reminder of the battles she'd won. Sometimes visitors noticed the small framed photo near Vanessa's pool gate, showing a group of green-tinted people running through the neighborhood, their faces a mix of panic and humiliation. Vanessa would just smile, her eyes gleaming with quiet pride, and say, "That's a reminder that karma always makes a splash." As Vanessa floated in her pool one evening, the water cool against her skin, the misty air carrying the scent of jasmine, she reflected on the journey. The pool wasn't just a luxury, it was a symbol of standing her ground with dignity and grace, a testament to her resilience in the face of racism and entitlement. The stars above twinkled like tiny promises, and for the first time in months, Vanessa felt truly at peace, the cicada's song a gentle lullaby in the night. If you've ever dealt with a Margaret in your life, drop a comment below and share your story. How did you handle entitled behavior? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of sweet, satisfying karma that hit harder than a summer splash. Weeks had passed since Margaret's green-tinted downfall by Vanessa's pool, but the echoes of that summer day still lingered in the quiet, upscale neighborhood of Columbus, Ohio. The late summer air carried the scent of ripening apples from a nearby orchard, a sweet undertone that mingled with the faint tang of chlorine drifting from Vanessa's backyard pool. The pool's crystal-clear water shimmered under the afternoon sun, reflecting the golden light in a dance of ripples, framed by the rustic stone wall and bare trees that stood as silent witnesses to the neighborhood's transformation. A misty haze softened the scene, wrapping the backyard in an ethereal glow, as if the very air had exhaled a sigh of relief after Margaret's departure. Her for sale sign still stood in front of her house, a stark red reminder of her defeat, but the neighborhood had blossomed into something new, something warmer, something kinder, thanks to Vanessa's unyielding resilience. Vanessa stood on her patio, a tray of freshly squeezed lemonade in her hands, the tart citrus scent wafting up as ice cubes clinked softly against the glass pitcher, their melody a quiet backdrop to the lively afternoon. She wore a simple white sundress, the fabric fluttering in the breeze, and her deep brown eyes softened as she watched the neighborhood children splash in her pool, their laughter a symphony that drowned out the cicadas' hum. The scene was a stark contrast to the tense, exclusionary gatherings Margaret had once hosted here. Gatherings that had been more about asserting dominance than building community. Now, the pool was a sanctuary for everyone, a symbol of unity in a neighborhood that had once been fractured by Margaret's entitlement and prejudice. But as Vanessa poured a glass of lemonade, the cool liquid splashing against the ice, her mind drifted to the cost of that unity. Margaret's racism had cut deeper than she'd let on, each trespass a reminder of the battles she'd fought her entire life. She remembered her first year on the force. The way a white colleague had sneered, "You'll never fit in here," his words echoing the same venom as Margaret's, "I figured you'd be more understanding." Those moments had left scars, quiet wounds that throbbed every time Margaret had waltzed into her backyard, acting as if Vanessa's presence in this neighborhood was a mistake to be corrected. Vanessa's throat tightened, the scent of chlorine grounding her as she set the pitcher down, the glass clinking softly against the stone table. She'd fought so hard to claim this space, not just for herself, but for everyone who'd ever been made to feel like they didn't belong. Mrs. Patel approached, her arms laden with a tray of golden samosas, the savory aroma of cumin and coriander drifting on the breeze, a comforting contrast to Vanessa's heavy thoughts. "Vanessa, you've outdone yourself again," she said, her voice warm as she set the tray down, the clatter of metal against stone a quiet note in the lively afternoon. "I never thought I'd see the day when this neighborhood felt like a home." Her words carried the weight of years of silence, years of enduring Margaret's microaggressions, like the time Margaret had scoffed at her Diwali lights, calling them too ethnic for the neighborhood's aesthetic. But now, Mrs. Patel stood tall, her sari shimmering in the sunlight, her pride a mirror to Vanessa's own. Vanessa handed her a glass of lemonade, the ice cubes tinkling like tiny bells, and managed a smile, though her heart still ached with the weight of her memories. "It's because of people like you," she said, her voice steady but thick with emotion, the kind of tone that had once calmed panicked civilians during her years on the force. "You spoke up when it mattered. That's what builds a home." Her words were a quiet acknowledgement of the community's transformation, a transformation that had begun the moment Margaret's green-tinted humiliation went viral, exposing her racism for all to see. The WhatsApp group that had once buzzed with complaints about Margaret now buzzed with plans for neighborhood events, barbecues, swim lessons, a book club that met by Vanessa's pool, the scent of Chardonnay replaced by the laughter of shared stories. One afternoon, as Vanessa set up for a community potluck, the air thick with the smoky aroma of her famous grilled chicken, a new family arrived, the ones who'd bought Margaret's house. Maya and Daniel stepped through the gate with their toddler Lily in tow, her tiny hand clutching a bright yellow floaty. Maya, a black woman with a warm smile, approached Vanessa, her voice hesitant but kind. "We heard about what happened here," she said, her eyes darting to the pool, then back to Vanessa. "We were nervous about moving in, worried we'd face the same challenges you did." Vanessa's heart clenched, the memory of Margaret's racist taunts flashing through her mind with a sharpness that stole her breath. She saw herself in Maya's eyes, the same fear, the same quiet determination to carve out a space in a world that too often tried to push them out. But Vanessa pushed the memory aside, her police training kicking in as she offered Maya a reassuring smile, her voice firm and steady. "You don't have to worry about that anymore," she said, her gaze unwavering, her words a promise carved from her own pain. "This neighborhood is different now. We look out for each other." The scent of grilled chicken and the laughter of children filled the air, a testament to the truth of her words. Daniel, a Latino man with a quiet demeanor, nodded, his shoulders relaxing as he set Lily down, her tiny feet pattering against the stone patio as she ran toward the pool, her giggles echoing over the water. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion, the warmth of the moment wrapping around them like a blanket. "It means a lot to know we're welcome here." The words hit Vanessa like a wave, her throat tightening with a mix of pride and relief. She'd turned Margaret's hate into something beautiful, something that made families like Maya and Daniel feel safe, feel seen. But not everyone was ready to let go of the past. One evening, as Vanessa was cleaning up after a swim lesson, the pool's surface rippling gently under the setting sun, the scent of chlorine sharp in the air, she noticed a familiar figure lurking near the stone wall. Margaret, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun, her face still carrying a faint minty hue, stood there, her arms crossed, her eyes blazing with a resentment that hadn't faded with time. She'd taken to walking the long way around the block to avoid Vanessa's house, but tonight, she'd come to confront the woman who'd dismantled her carefully curated life. "You think you've won, don't you?" Margaret spat, her voice low and venomous, her heels clicking against the pavement as she stepped closer, the scent of her floral perfume a cloying contrast to the fresh evening air. "You turned this neighborhood into a circus, and for what? To prove a point?" Her words were laced with the same racism that had fueled her trespassing, the same entitlement that had led her to believe Vanessa didn't belong. Vanessa set down the pool skimmer, the metal clanging softly against the stone, and turned to face Margaret, her posture unyielding, the same stance she'd used to face down armed suspects during her years on the force. "I didn't do this to prove a point," she said, her voice calm but edged with steel, her deep brown eyes locking onto Margaret's. "I did it because I deserve to feel safe in my own home. Something you tried to take from me because of the color of my skin." Her words cut through the humid air like a blade, and Margaret's eyes widened, a flicker of realization crossing her face, the weight of her actions finally sinking in. "You'll never belong here," Margaret hissed, but her voice trembled, her coral nails digging into her arms as she turned to leave. She stumbled slightly, her heels catching on the uneven pavement, and for the first time Vanessa saw the cracks in her facade. Fear, shame, defeat. Margaret's shoulders slumped as she walked away, her silhouette fading into the twilight, the scent of her perfume lingering like a bitter memory. Vanessa watched her go, the cicada's song resuming in the stillness, and felt a quiet satisfaction settle in her chest. Margaret hadn't just lost the neighborhood. She'd lost the power to make others feel small. Months later, as autumn painted the bare trees in shades of crimson and gold, Vanessa's pool remained the heart of the neighborhood, a symbol of resilience and unity. The air carried the crisp scent of fallen leaves, mingling with the faint tang of chlorine that still clung to the water, even as the days grew cooler. The stone wall stood as a steadfast guardian, its surface warmed by the late afternoon sun, and the misty ambience that had once felt ominous now felt like a gentle embrace, a reminder of the battles Vanessa had fought and won. The community had fully embraced Vanessa's vision of inclusivity, their gatherings a testament to the power of kindness in the face of racism. The neighborhood swim team, now led by Vanessa, had become a source of pride, with kids like little Lily, Maya, and Daniel's daughter May learning to swim under Vanessa's patient guidance. Lily's giggles echoed over the water as Vanessa held her up, the scent of sunscreen and chlorine a nostalgic reminder of the summer that had changed everything. "You're a natural, Lily," Vanessa said, her voice warm, her smile wide as she adjusted Lily's floaty, the bright yellow plastic gleaming in the sunlight. Maya watched from the sidelines, her eyes shining with gratitude, the scent of her homemade apple pie, a contribution to the team's bake sale, drifting on the breeze. The bake sale was just one of many events that had sprung up in the wake of Margaret's departure, each one a celebration of the community's newfound unity. Mrs. Patel organized a Diwali celebration that lit up the neighborhood, the scent of incense and the glow of oil lamps filling the air as neighbors gathered to share in the festivities, their laughter mingling with the crackle of sparklers. For the first time, Mrs. Patel didn't worry about Margaret's judgmental stares. She felt free to celebrate her culture, her heritage, and Vanessa's poolside became the backdrop for a night of joy that no one would forget. The most poignant moment came during the neighborhood's annual Harvest Festival, held in Vanessa's backyard, the pool covered with a tarp to make room for tables laden with food. Pumpkin pies, cornbread, tamales, the smoky aroma of barbecue ribs blending with the sweetness of caramel apples. The air was crisp, the scent of fallen leaves mingling with the warmth of shared meals, and fairy lights strung along the stone wall twinkled like stars, casting a magical glow over the scene. Vanessa stood by the dessert table, a mug of hot cider in her hands, the cinnamon scent warming her as she watched her neighbors dance to a lively playlist, their laughter a melody that drowned out the past. Mrs. Thompson, an older white woman who'd lived across the street for 15 years, approached Vanessa, her eyes misty with emotion. She'd been one of the neighbors who'd stayed silent during Margaret's campaign against Vanessa, too afraid to rock the boat, but now she stood tall, a green ribbon pinned to her sweater as a quiet symbol of solidarity. "Vanessa," she said, her voice trembling, her hands clutching a small photo album, "I owe you an apology. I should have spoken up sooner. About Margaret, about everything. But you showed me what courage looks like." She opened the album, revealing a picture of the green-tinted chaos that had unfolded by the pool, Margaret's furious face frozen in time. "I keep this to remind myself to be better," she said, her voice thick with emotion, the scent of her lavender perfume a soft contrast to the crisp autumn air. Vanessa set down her mug, the ceramic clinking softly against the table, and pulled Mrs. Thompson into a hug, the warmth of the embrace a bridge across the divides Margaret had tried to deepen. As they parted, Vanessa looked out at the festival, children running with caramel apples in hand, Mrs. Patel teaching Maya a traditional dance, Daniel laughing with a group of dads over a shared plate of ribs, and felt a wave of pride so profound it brought tears to her eyes. This was what she'd fought for. Not just a pool, not just a home, but a community where everyone belonged, where racism had no place. The scent of cider and the laughter of her neighbors wrapped around her like a warm embrace, and for the first time, Vanessa felt the full weight of what she'd achieved. As the festival continued, Vanessa slipped away to float in her pool one last time before the season turned too cold. The tarp removed for the evening, the water cool against her skin, the misty air carried the scent of jasmine, a faint echo of the summer that had changed everything, and the stars above twinkled like tiny promises, their light reflecting on the water's surface. Vanessa closed her eyes, the cicadas' song a gentle lullaby in the night, and reflected on her journey. This pool wasn't just a luxury, it was a symbol of standing her ground with dignity and grace, a testament to her resilience in the face of racism and entitlement. She'd turned Margaret's hate into a legacy of kindness, a legacy that would live on in every laugh, every shared meal, every moment of community that now defined this neighborhood. The framed photo by the pool gate showing Margaret and her friends running through the neighborhood, green and humiliated, remained a quiet reminder of that legacy. Visitors often asked about it, their curiosity piqued by the chaotic scene, and Vanessa would just smile, her eyes gleaming with quiet pride. "That's a reminder that karma always makes a splash," she'd say, her voice warm, her heart full. If you've ever dealt with a Margaret in your life, drop a comment below and share your story. How did you handle entitled behavior? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of sweet, satisfying karma that hit harder than a summer splash.